Watch where you're going and have a seat. It's time for this edition of the Walla Walla Garden City Gazette. Today's issue is June 16th, 1894. Mrs. Dell Cox spoke at the courthouse Wednesday evening on temperance. She is a national organizer and lecturer for the WCTU. Marriage licenses were issued Saturday to Seymour A. Kelly and Lulu A. Carter of Walla Walla County, and J. M. Towner and Clara Metger of Umatilla County, Oregon. During the past week, there have been shipped from Walla Walla 2,468 crates of strawberries, 293 boxes of cherries, and 224 crates of cabbage. Teachers elected. At the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of School District No. 1 of Walla Walla on Wednesday, the following teachers were elected for the next school year: City Superintendent R.C. Kerr, High School, Miss Rose E. Dovell, Baker School, Miss L.L. West, Miss Ella Seal, Miss Mamie Thomas, Miss Margaret Wooden, Miss Stella Lacey, Jenny M. Markin, Miss Georgia Paul, Miss Jeannie Phipps. Payne School, Principal F.M. Burke, Teacher Mrs. H.E. Shelton, Mrs. M.E. Liggett, Miss Sadie Burr, Miss Alice Weir. Park Street School, Miss Mary Gilliam, Miss Mary Taylor. A horse race. A quarter-of-a-mile dash was run between Uncle Tim and Smoothwire at the racetrack Monday. Uncle Tim won in 22 3/4 seconds. The purse was $150. A large number of persons were in attendance. It was rumored that the owner of Smoothwire will give a small horde of horses and considerable money to anyone who can furnish a horse that will beat Uncle Tim. Lady and the Tiger. Hugh Matlock is a man who ought to run for Congress if all reports are true regarding him. For the past few days, he has been making history at a rate never before dreamed of by the most vivid imagination. Matlock is, or was, a resident of Walla Walla till a few days ago, when our record commences. No sensations appearing to set tongues wagging, he concluded to establish a sensation syndicate and hold all the stock. Accordingly, he commenced operations by persuading a fair widow of Walla Walla to leave all her earthly cares behind and follow him. Her correct name is Malott, the Widow Malott, as her intimate friends called her. Hugh Matlock became enamored of the widow's fair charms and skipped by the dark of the moon with her to the far-famed city of Dayton. Dayton's Sheriff Allen, to Matlock's experienced optics, appeared to be the victim he was looking for, and his eyes would ever and anon drift from the charming visage of his adopted widow to the glistening proportions of the sheriff's spirited team. Accordingly, one night this week, Matlock and the widow packed their superfluous apparel in a collar box, and while the moon hid its troubled face behind an accommodating cloud, the sheriff's carriage and team were called into requisition by the loving pair. Sheriff was in Walla Walla this week looking for the borrowed team, but with no success. It was reported by a man that he detected from the tower of City Hall with his strongest glass the pair mounting a high hill and driving a dashing team northward in the vicinity of Steptoe. The sheriff has not yet found his horses. If you send your friends a weekly newspaper, you won't have to write such long letters. The Gazette for $1 a year, 6 months, 50 cents, 3 months, 25 cents. Heroic tiger miners, Burke, Idaho. A serious accident happened in the Tiger Mine yesterday, which called out a fine display of heroism. 4 men were working in the bottom of the shaft. They had put in 14 blasts and lighted the fuse before ascending out of danger, but owing to some misunderstanding of signals, the cage was not hoisted. The men acted promptly in their peril. They cut 11 of the 14 fuses. The cage then started, and all made a rush for it, but one of them was left behind. Before the cage had risen 50 feet, the others gave the signal to descend to save their companion. He was taken on in safety, but the cage had barely started upward when the blasts went off. Lee Ward and a man named Morgan were injured by flying rocks. It is feared that Morgan may lose an eye. The bold wisdom of an old-timer, once more upon the waters. The old-timer has been to Wallula to see the flood. The lake-like expanse of the river, torn into white caps by the gale, stretches to our right as we go. It washes through cars and car shops, schoolhouse and church, and apparently 3/4 of the houses of the historic town of Wallula. Our captain tells us that he believes that the river has not been so high for centuries. The Native Americans, he tells us, never put their graves where they suppose that the waters can reach them, but this flood has opened many old Native American graves. While we would not have missed seeing it for a year's growth, yet may we never see its like again. May it remain in history as without parallel for grandeur and destructiveness. Plain pickles, mixed pickles, sweet pickles, German dill pickles at Gardner's and Simms. They were photographed. 2 Paducah young ladies, while on a visit to Louisville, saw in a photographer's showcase a picture of some pretty girls peering through a hole in a torn newspaper. Seized with a desire to emulate the cute idea, the visitors hastened to a night of the snapshot and had themselves camerated in the like position. The pictures were printed and delivered. At first the young ladies were delighted with the likeness, but when several had been given away, most to gentlemen friends, the girls made a horrifying discovery. The photographer had used a Louisville newspaper for their heads, and directly beneath where the 2 smiling faces appeared was the big display advertisement of a big clothing establishment. It began, "There are no flies on us. Our pants are reinforced in the seat." A little too daring. Those who have traveled the old stage line between Walla Walla and the upper country remember well the steep and long hill to be descended just before getting into Waitsburg. Freighters and stagemen remember many accidents which have befallen vehicles upon this decline. Several of those were fatal to passengers. The place has always been the dread of travelers. Miss Nettie Ford of Walla Walla was with a number of others going by team from Walla Walla to Dayton. When at the top of a big hill just south of this city, she decided to take the wheel from the wagon and ride it down the hill, which is very steep and long. The brake refused to perform its function, and soon the wheel was going at a rapid rate as to make it impossible to keep her feet on the pedals, and the rider was thrown to the ground with great violence, rendering her unconscious and cutting and bruising her considerably. She was picked up and carried to the residence of L.T. Parker, where medical aid was summoned. Hugh McElroy was dangerously stabbed yesterday by his partner, John Ainsley. During the past 3 weeks, the 2 men have been traveling through the country in search of work, and during this time were accompanied by another man whose name is not known. The 3 men were camped in the northwest part of Walla Walla. McElroy and Ainsley began to engage in a discussion over the cooking. Suddenly, the latter drew a large pocket knife and stabbed McElroy in the left breast. Ainsley then turned and fled to another camp. Physicians discovered that the knife blade entered McElroy's left breast, penetrating the lung about 4 inches. Ainsley was arrested and placed under bonds of $500. Local leather makers. There are a few places for commercial purposes which have done more to build up Walla Walla at home and abroad than the tannery owned and conducted by Frank Weber and Son. It is the oldest establishment of its kind in Washington and outlives all attempts at the same business. Mr. Frank Weber, the senior proprietor, is known by all the shoemakers in the Inland Empire and is highly respected for his fair dealing.